Okay, y'all, turn to Song of Songs, chapter 4. We're going to look at 4 to 5:1. I am here to tell you that I warned you last week, right? I did warn you last week, so you could volunteer in the nursery today. And so if you missed last week's warning, this is your warning. Holly will still take you this morning. Holly? I asked her this morning while we were coming in, did you have an extraordinary number of volunteers in the nursery this week? And she, to her credit and to your credit, she did not. But this is your warning. If you need to go work in the nursery, take it. Please. Please take it. I don't want the email. I don't want the conversation. If you need to leave, leave. That's the warning. Today, the Bible. This is what we're going to do, the Bible. The Holy Spirit's inspired and inscripturated words, the words of God, the verbal action of God, the verbal power of God, where God speaks people back to life again, where the personal, active presence of Jesus is released into your life, into your relationships, into the world. The Bible, this Bible today is going to glory in sex. It's going to celebrate sex. It's going to exalt in it. It's going to exult in it. Today the Bible is going to say this about sex. Quote, "It is very good." So now the squirming begins, right? I know my wife is wondering, oh, this is the sermon I dreaded all year. See the head nodding? Yes. I want you to look at Song of Songs, look at chapter 5, verse 1. Under the part of others, do you see it? If you have the ESV, it's under others. The others are the message of the text. So you have the Song of Songs, you have these love songs, and then you'll have he, she, and then you'll have this others. When the others speak, they're giving you the message. When the others speak, they're telling you the divine interpretation of the text. It's the message. It's the big idea. This is what it's all about. And so the others are saying this to us. Eat, friends, drink, and be drunk with love. Literally, be intoxicated with sexual love. This is the divine message. It's the divine message from 4:1 to 5:1, everything in between. And so it's saying be intoxicated with sexual love. Between 4:1 and 5:1 is sexual love. God is literally saying to you and me, drink it up. It's my gift to you. Sometimes I mix up my words with Nancy. I'll say, hey, honey, let's have sex. And she'll respond and say, hey, honey, let's make love. Who's right? Which one is it? Sex? Love? The Song of Songs says, you're both right. The Song of Songs can't imagine a world, the Bible can't imagine a world where there's love, marital love, without sex. It can't comprehend a world where there's sex without marital love. It's both. They're inseparable. They're entwined. They were made for each other. This is why the modern view of hooking up or pornography is not really sex, because there's no love in it. There's no binding love in it. There's no magic of what we looked at last week of covenant in it. There's no marital love in it. So it's not even sex, because there is no sex without love. And then you have the traditional view of dutiful sex, hiding under the sheet sex. Do it but don't enjoy it kind of sex. Sex is dirty kind of sex. It's only for procreation sex. And that view, traditional view of sex, is not love. It's not love because there's no sex in it. There's no intoxicating, sensually electric realities to it. Sex and love are inseparable in the Bible. It can't imagine a world with one and not the other, even though we can. Because the world we live in separates them. The hearts we have separates them. Historically, the church understood sex this way. It understood it, quote, the sign and seal of love, of oneness, of intimacy, of union. In other words, historically, from the ancient fathers to the medieval, down to the Protestant Reformation, the church as a whole history says sex is the sacrament of marriage. In other words, it's a sign of marriage. It points to it. It points to love. It expresses it, but it's a seal of it. It actually fuels it. It fuels intimacy. It fuels love. So it's not only a pointer, but it's also a provider. It's a sacrament, right? That's why Keller says in his Meaning of Marriage book this way, Kathy and I have often likened sex in a marriage to oil in an engine. With it, the friction between all the moving parts will burn out the motor. Without joyful, loving sex, the friction in a marriage will bring about anger, resentment, hardness, and disappointment. Rather than being a commitment glue that holds you together, it becomes a force to divide you. Then he goes on to say, never give up on working on your sex life in marriage. So do you see what he's saying? He's saying that sex in marriage is the oil in the engine that makes the marriage work. Keeps all the parts moving. It's a commitment glue. The Song of Songs cannot imagine a world with one and not the other. Sex and love are inseparable. G.D. Greer, he preached on this text and he said this. He said, Solomon is speaking on the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, and here's what you need to get your mind around. God is into a level of sensuality that most of us are not comfortable talking about. You see, we have thought about God as the enemy of sexual pleasure, but in these passages assure us that God's not only against us, He made it. So as we read this text, which we're about to do, just reading the text is going to be difficult for some. Just reading the text, here's what I want you to think about. Here's what I want you, especially when we start looking at it. Don't be holier than God. Don't be more uncomfortable about this subject than God is. And if we can agree on that, we're going to be okay. Please stand for the hearing of God's word. Have a husband and wife team do this reading for obvious reasons.
Song of Songs, chapter 4, verse 1. Behold, you are beautiful, my love. Behold, you are beautiful. Your eyes are doves behind your veil. Your hair is like a flock of goats leaping down the slopes of Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of shorn ewes that have come up from the washing, all of which bear twins, and not one among them has lost its young. Your lips are like a scarlet thread, and your mouth is lovely. Your cheeks are like halves of a pomegranate behind your veil. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built in rows of stone. On it hang 1,000 shields, all of the shields of warriors. Your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle, that graze among the lilies. Until the days breathes and the shadows flee, I will go away to the mountain of myrrh and the hill of frankincense. You are altogether beautiful, my love. There is no flaw in you. Come with me from Lebanon, my bride. Come with me from Lebanon. Depart from the peak of Amana, from the dens of lions, from the peak of Senir and Hermon, and from the dens of lions, from the mountains of leopards. You have captivated my heart, my sister, my bride. You have captivated my heart with one glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace. How beautiful is your love, my sister, my bride. How much better is your love than wine, and the fragrance of your oils than any spice. Your lips drip nectar, my bride. Honey and milk are under your tongue. The fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. A garden locked is my sister, my bride. A spring locked, a fountain sealed. Your shoots are an orchard of pomegranates, with all choicest fruits. Henna with nard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all trees of frankincense, myrrh, and aloes, with all chief spices. A garden fountain, a well of living water, and flowing streams from Lebanon.
Awake, O north wind, and come, O south winds. Blow upon my garden, let its spices flow. Let my beloved come to his garden and eat its choicest fruits.
I came to my garden, my sister, my bride. I gathered my myrrh with my spice. I ate my honeycomb with my honey, I drank my wine with my milk.
Eat, friends, drink, and be drunk with love. The word of the Lord.
Y'all, please be seated. So, Lord, we ask that you would shine on the page. We thank you for the wonder of the words here, and we ask that the reality, the penetrating reality that you love us, that your love is transcendent, would come across fresh and new, and Lord, that you would actually renew the realities of our mind, and by that transform us. And we ask this in your name, amen. Okay, what's the life change in this text? The life change in this text is very, very simple. It doesn't, whether you're married, it's the same application, it's the same life change, or whether you're single, whether you're a preteen or a teenager, whether you're struggling with sexual sin or not, or whether you're struggling with same-sex desires or not, or whether you're married and sexually frustrated or married and sexually disinterested. The text has the same life change for all of us here this morning. The text wants you and I to feel deep in our bones a high view of sex. To put it emotionally, the text wants you to glory in sex. The text wants you to celebrate the reality of this gift. It wants you to be in awe of it. It wants you to wonder at it. And if you're married, it wants you to drink it up. If you're married, it wants you to be intoxicated with the wonders and the realities and the terrain here. To be spiritually and sexually electrified for a married couple. So our plan is simple. We're just going to follow the flow of the text, which means we're actually going to follow their sexual experience. I bet you didn't see that coming in the Bible, right? So here's how we're going to begin. Sexual intimacy begins this way. It begins with, look at you. Look at you, honey. Verse 1, chapter 4, remember, behold can either mean pay attention, like focus, look, or it can mean, wow. Wow, you're beautiful, my love. Wow, you're beautiful. And then what happens next is he undresses her. And he starts from the top and works his way down, and he is electrified by 7 aspects of her body. Why 7? Because 7 is a perfect number in the Bible. So in other words, he's electrified. She is perfect to him. She is perfect desire to him. She is perfect pleasure to him. And this is why it's bookend. It's a visual playground for him. It's bookend in verse 1 and verse 7 where he actually says it again. Oh, wow. After all 7 aspects of perfection, you're flawless. You're perfect, right? You are altogether beautiful, my love. There's no flaw in you. These are 7 verses of looking. These are 7 verses of helplessly staring. These are 7 verses of wonder. And it's a long section, right? He takes his time. He is completely enjoying his wife's beautiful body. He is completely enjoying the glorious terrain of his wife. So are you ready? First, he takes off the veil, verse 1. Your eyes are doves behind your veil. Next, he takes off the hairpiece, so the hairpiece is underneath the veil. And when he does, this is an Israelite. This is a Jewish woman, and they have long black hair, curling hair. And so her hair is released from being up on her hairpiece and just shimmers down all around her shoulders like a herd of black-haired goats, right? Not that we know what that's all about because this is not our time, but here you go. Your hair is a flock of goats leaping down the slopes of Gilead. The point is that they're let loose and free and full and flowing down the hills of Gilead. What happens next? What happens next? She smiles. Man. Any married man, and if you're not married, you're just going to have to take our word for it. Any married man knows what a smile from his wife does to him when he's making advances towards her. Every married man knows what that's like, and there's nothing like it. And you're asking, well, Jeff, how do you know she's smiling? Because he's talking about her teeth. You ready? Verse 1. Your teeth are like a flock of shorn ewes that have come from the washing, all of which bear twins, and not one among them has lost its young. In other words, your teeth are white, and you have all of them. Right? And that's no small feat in the ancient world. They didn't have John Schultz. They didn't have dentists. They didn't have floss, and they didn't have toothpaste, and they didn't have toothbrushes. It's amazing that her teeth are white, and she has all of them. Nancy noticed my teeth when she first met me. You know what she said? And she said, I noticed your teeth. I noticed, quote, they were all banged up. True love, though, right? She had no problem kissing these banged up teeth. I blame my parents, though, and they're here in this place this morning. My brother Pete got braces. I was supposedly a borderline case, right? Yeah, borderline case, okay. What happens next? He kisses her deeply. Look, this is not a peck on the cheeks. Look at verse 3. Your lips are like a scarlet thread and your mouth is lovely. The only way he knows her mouth is lovely is either he's her dentist or he's exploring her mouth. This is a deep kiss. This is not a peck on the cheeks. What happens next? Do you see what happens next? He touches her cheeks. Look at verse 3. Your cheeks are like halves of pomegranate. Now, he could have chosen any red fruit on the planet in the ancient world that we still have today. He could have chosen strawberries. He could have chosen raspberries. He could have chosen apples. And he could have chosen pink grapefruit. But he chose pomegranate for a reason, because a pomegranate in the ancient world is kind of like, sort of like, the way people look at Viagra today. Sort of. Like. It was an aphrodisiac. It was a sexual stimulant. He intentionally singled out that. What happens next? He kisses her, he touches her neck. No one knows exactly what her neck has to do with the Tower of David. Nobody knows. Built in rows of stone with 1,000 shields of warriors hanging on it. I guess all we can say is that she must have had a pretty good neck. It's pretty attractive, right? What happens next? What happens next is he finally slides off her bridal robe. Verse 5, your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle that graze among the lilies. This is not how most husbands will describe their wives' breasts, right? But here's the point. The point is, he finally gets to see them. He finally gets to touch them. What do you mean, Jeff? Well, fawns are hidden and elusive. Hardly anyone finds them. Hardly anyone can spot them. Now, in today's culture, not so much, right? In today's culture, they're not hidden and they're not elusive. But that's his point. His point is, man, I finally get to see them, right? And his point is about fawns, too, is incredibly soft, so he finally gets to touch them. Now, I know most women out there at some point in time in their life, I think Nancy and I have even had this conversation. I don't want to have this conversation with my daughters. But at one point in time, a woman's going to ask, I don't get it. I don't get it. What is so intriguing to men about women's breasts, right? Isn't that a question that women will ask? Well, I guarantee you don't need to ask a man that, right? Here's the point. God's answer is why this is that way is that he has made women's breasts sexually electric, sexually potent, sexually powerful. Well, why would God do that? So husbands could be electrified by them. That's why he did it. Intoxicated by them. Well, how do you know that? Because in verse 6, he tells her basically, here's what he says, honey, I'm going to enjoy your breasts all night long. Two quick applications. Generally speaking, men possess a higher concentration of visual desire than women. So wives, do you want to practically love your husbands? Love your husbands visually. Don't hide under the sheets. Applications for ladies. Women in general, if you look at verse 1 and you look at verse 7, this is a bookend. It's a visual bookend, but notice that it's all about her beauty. And so there seems to be in women a desire, a higher potency of desire for the need to be beautiful. So husbands, if you want to practically love your wife, tell her how beautiful she is to you. Don't hold your tongue. Tell her. And never stop telling her. And take your time telling her. He did. Sexual intimacy begins with, look at you. Look at you. And then sexual intimacy continues with each loving the other by saying something like, I want to pleasure you. Look at verse 8. Come with me from Lebanon, my bride. Come with me from Lebanon. Depart from the peak of Ammon, from the peak of Senir and Hermon, from the dens of the lions, from the mountains of the leopards. The emphasis in Hebrew, if you want to emphasize something in a Hebrew language, you put it in the front of the sentence. At the emphasis on the front of the sentence is with me. He's saying, come with me. These are the first words in the sentence. And so what he's saying is, I want to take you on a journey. I want to take you somewhere. And so the question in the text is, where does he want her to go? To his hometown, to a penthouse in New York City, to a vacation home on the river or at the ocean? And the answer is he's not wanting to take her to a specific location. He's wanting to take her on a mutual trip of passion, of sexual electricity, of pleasure and desire, right? So there's two quick applications here. If this is the case, what he's doing is he's inviting her to come with him, to join him in mutual pleasure of pleasing each other. So I'm going to get two applications, one for women, and then I'm going to have a woman say it because I'm not going to say it. And then we're going to have one from a doctor saying it to husbands, okay? So here it is. One from a woman to other wives. Not only does your husband want to be wanted, he wants you to enjoy sex as well. Did you know that your husband longs to see you sexually fulfilled? His heart races when he sees you respond to him. It's really not all about him. It's just as much about you. He wants you to know that he's the one. He wants to know that he's the one who can take you to the moon and back with the crescendo or climax he created. So after it happens, she says, he thinks to himself, I did that to her. So wives, to practically love your husband looks like you enjoying sexual intimacy. It looks like you being intoxicated with his sexual love. Now, men, for husbands, one from Dr. Kevin Lehman. He has a book called Sheet Music. It's one of the two books I use in premarital counseling, The Meaning of Marriage and in Sheet Music. I assign sheet music at the last week, the day, two before the wedding, because it's just too painful if you do it before. Here's the deal. He says biologically and biblically this. He says that God has put in, he says the highest potencies of pleasure, the highest concentrations of sexual electricity, the most intoxicating sexual love is you giving pleasure to your wife. You driving your wife crazy. Not gratifying yourself. Isn't this incredible? So God, it's amazing. God puts more pleasure in you loving someone. God packs more desire, more electricity in you pleasing someone than being pleased, and you serving someone than being served. You see how this works? And it's the same way in a husband and wife relationship. So husbands, practically loving your life looks like you pleasing your wife. It looks like you driving her crazy, not just gratifying yourself. I was going to say something about the M word, but I think I'm going to wait on that. But that's why people ask me, well, what about masturbation? I said, the only thing I think about masturbation is just self-gratification. It's sex without love. The Bible doesn't understand that. Can't comprehend that. It's not a world by which things were made that way. So sexual intimacy loves the other with, I want to pleasure you. Well, no, we got one more. Sexual intimacy is all about, you drive me crazy. Look at verse 9. You have captivated my heart, my sister, my bride. You have captivated my heart with one glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace. If he lived today, he'd say, honey, you drive me crazy. I want you. That's what he's saying here, right? So what is it about his wife that's driving him crazy? And the answer is her naked body. So if you look at verses 10 through 11, he compares her naked body to the promised land. In verses 12 through 15, he compares her naked body to the Garden of Eden, to paradise. And then he's so incredibly vivid, he's so incredibly graphic and specific about one part of her body in verses 12 through 15. That's 4 verses. The literal translation of verse 13 goes like this. Are you ready? Your thighs shelter a paradise. That's as far as I'm going on that one. Sorry, I can't even go farther than that. I'm just done. This whole thing's worn me out. 2 services of doing this. I'm done. I can't go anymore. So what's the point of it all? What's the point of likening her naked body to the promised land and to paradise? The point is your spouse's naked body is supposed to drive you crazy. It's supposed to be promised land-like. It's supposed to be paradise-like. That's the way God intended it. This is why she finally speaks up in verse 16 and she says, awake. Oh, wait. Remember before she said, don't awake love? Don't awake sexual love until it's proper time? Now she's like, she's like Gandalf calling all corners of the globe, right? She's calling the north wind and the south wind. She's saying, awake. Here it comes. Awake, O north wind. O come, O south wind. Blow upon my garden. Let its spices flow. Let my beloved come into his garden and eat its choicest fruits. In other words, he's saying, you drive me crazy. And she's saying, I know. And I love driving you crazy. And I want to be driven crazy. Be intoxicated by sexual love, says God. That's the message, remember? 5:1, he says, be intoxicated. Drink it in. It's my gift to you. So there you have it. Whew. I see Ty left. Hey, buddy. We just looked at the glory of sex. And for you more sensitive types, the glory of sexual love. Is your view of sex this high? If you're not married and your view of sex is not this high, you will be susceptible to sexual sin. Sex will just be an appetite to you. It'll be an appetite like eating, and you just need to eat. It will turn into a selfish act for you, where it's just about you gratifying yourself. It's all about you. And then here's the thing that's really painful. You're taking something that's not yours. You're stealing it. If you're married and your view of sex is not this high, you need to look under the surface at the cracks in your relationship. Sex is so powerful in marriage, it's called a sacrament of marriage by the ancient church and by church history. It's called commitment glue. It's called the oil that makes the engine run in a marriage, okay? So whatever. It's so powerful because it does 2 things. One is it actually fuels the relationship. It deepens your love. It accelerates your intimacy. It heals you. And then the other thing, though, it does is it's like an engine, right? It reveals, but it's also like a mirror. It reveals the cracks in your relationship. And so, I mean, not even, if Nancy and I are not right relationally, I mean, you have to understand the context here. My wife understands this context. If we're not right relationally, I can't even do it. It reveals your relationship. So here's what happens. The Meaning of Marriage says it this way: sex is such a great and sensitive thing that you will not be able to sweep your problems under the rug. If you've got problems in your marriage, it's going to show up in the bedroom. It's a healer, and it's an intimate builder. It's commitment glue. It's a sacrament. It fuels and accelerates union, intimacy, friendship, lovers, all of that. But it also is so powerful that it's a mirror, and it's like, woo, we got to talk. Let's go talk first. We got to clear the air. Something's not right here. And then let's go back, right? Here's what he says: sex is such a great and sensitive thing that you will not be able to sweep your problems under the rug. Unless your marital relationship is in a good condition, sex doesn't work. So be very careful to look beneath the surface. A lack of sexual compatibility might not really be a lack of lovemaking skill at all. It may be a sign of deeper problems in the relationship. It is often the case that if those problems are addressed, the sexual intimacy improves. End quote. Okay. So some of you are just freaking out right now. You're like, oh my word, I'm sexually broken. Yep, you are. We all are. And we're going to speak a little more directly to those realities in the next couple of weeks, because it's just interesting. This is the center, the high water mark. This is the exact center of the song. 5:1. This section, it's what it was building to, and it's what everything is going to flow from. And so we've built to it the centerpiece, the high. This is it, the glory of sex, right? And then the next couple of weeks, though, we're going to come down from that mountain. And it's very interesting that everything has been perfect up to this point, and then we're going to start coming down the mountain, and it's almost like the author switched gears. He gave you law the whole time, perfection, the realities the way that God made it, and now he's going to turn to you and me, and he says, but you live here. What do you do when you live here in a sexually broken marriage, in a sexually broken person, in a sexually broken culture? Well, we're going to look at that in the next couple of weeks. But we're going to end this way. A high view of the glory of sex. Ultimately, sex is glorious because it contains concentrated pieces of ultimate glory. In other words, there's an original glory. There's a source glory. And the source glory, the original glory, is the spring from which all glories come from, the desire from which all desires come from, the pleasure from which all pleasures come from, the transcendent electricity that all electrical currents come from. And God, being that source, has placed in his creation. The reason why it's very good or it's good is because he sees himself in it. He's placed parts of his glory in everything that he's made. And in the image bearer, he put a lot of it in. In this particular area, he concentrated his glory to reflect the union that you have with Jesus in transcendent love. So here, if those of you that are married and you know the reality of the ecstasy of sexual union, thank God at this point in our life, it only lasts for a little while. Otherwise, it would consume us. But guess what? That is a picture, that is a sign, that is a taste of a relationship with Jesus and his love for you. And one day, it will be forever. It won't end like it does in our bedrooms. That ecstasy will one day be bigger and better than that forever and ever and ever. That's the ultimate glory of sex. I'm done.